The first flying robot ever built didn't drop bombs and it didn't take photos. Honestly, it barely did anything. It looked like a spider having a nightmare, and the US Army very generously called it the flying octopus. This is the real history of the drone, and it's a lot weirder than you've been told. We're going to cover a lot of ground in this one, like the very first actual quadcopter. It's not what you've heard, where the word drone really comes from, which is much ruder than you'd expect. The moment drones went from a locked away military secret to something flying over your backyard, and I'm saving the single strangest fact in this whole story to the very end. So without further ado, let's jump in. The first quadcopter ever flown wasn't a toy. It was built for the US Army in 1922, and it looked like someone strapped 4 ceiling fans to a filing cabinet and told it to fly. Engineer George de Beauthazat builds a machine with 4 arms, each tipped with 6 spinning rotor blades. They call it the flying octopus, which is generous because it wobbles up to around 15 feet, drifts sideways more than it flies under actual control, and somehow Thomas Edison personally sends a telegram calling it a success. The man who built it once described himself in writing as the world's greatest scientist. But the flying machine he built could barely lift off the ground. I bet he liked the smell of his own farts too. And he wasn't even first. 2 years earlier, a French engineer, Etienne Aviation, had already flown his own 4-rotor design, then flew it about 1,000 more times, presumably just to make a point, and set the first official helicopter world record. Both machines then completely vanish from history for about 90 years. Nobody even mentions the 4-rotor idea again, until something completely different drags it kicking and screaming back into the spotlight. The word drone comes from a target practice plane named after a queen bee, and the factory that built it accidentally discovered a movie star. 1935, Britain builds a radio-controlled aircraft called the DH-82B, Queen Bee. The name sticks for a reason. In a beehive, the male drone is the one that just follows the queen around and doesn't do a whole lot else. A bit harsh, but here we are. An entertainer turned engineer named Reginald Denny brings the idea to America and mass produces his own version on a California assembly line. The man behind the world's first mass-produced drone company was, before all of that, a working Hollywood actor. Genuinely can't believe which of those careers is less believable. Believe me, I've tried. In 1945, an army photographer visits the same factory to shoot publicity photos of the workers. One of them is a teenager named Norma Jean Doherty. Those are her first ever modeling photos. She goes on to become Marilyn Monroe. And the officer who assigned the photographer to the factory that day would go on to become the President of the United States of America. Small world. Slightly alarming resume. That's strange enough on its own, but it's not the strangest thing in this story. Not even close. One single televised interview in 2013 sold more drones than the entire previous decade combined. For most of the 20th century, this technology barely left military and government hands. Then, in about 3 years, that changed completely. In 2010, a compact camera drone you could fly from your own phone stunned the crowd at a major electronics show. By 2013, a new wave of affordable, foldable camera drones properly hit the mass market. And that same year, Amazon's Jeff Bezos went on 60 Minutes and announced the company was exploring drone delivery. Public interest didn't just grow after that, it spiked almost overnight. The FAA had been issuing about 2 commercial drone permits a year. 2. By 2015, that number had passed 1,000. By 2016, it was over 3,000. Basically, like it or not, when Jeffy B pipes up, the world listens. In 1898, a crowd watched a small unmanned boat move entirely on its own, and some of them were convinced there was a monkey hidden inside of it. That was Nikola Tesla, demonstrating the first ever remote-controlled vehicle at an exhibition in Madison Square Garden. Nobody in the room could explain what they were seeing. Some called it magic, some called it telepathy. Patient examiners initially found the whole idea too incredible to approve. Tesla, never one for modesty, called it a borrowed mind. That single laughed-off demonstration is the direct ancestor of everything we've just talked about. And more than a century later, That same basic idea, something you control from a distance that can eventually think for itself, is being used to search for missing hikers, map wildfires from the air, and get medical supplies to places roads can't reach. Turns out that magic boat guy was onto something. The machine that could barely lift 6 feet off the ground in 1922 now coordinates with dozens of others in the air at once, making its own decisions mid-flight, and it fits in your pocket. Name me a better glow-up in the last century, other than Neville Longbottom. If you made it this far, congratulations! You now know more about drone history than most people who actually fly one. Rare crowd. And honestly, today was just the surface. There are plenty more weird stories in the history that we didn't get to. Don't worry, they're coming. Subscribe to make sure you're here when they land.